What an intriguing group of people you are. To a psychologist, I've had the opportunity to listen in on some of your conversations and to watch you interacting with each other for the last couple of days. And I think it's fair to say already that there are 23 people in this room at this moment showing psychological symptoms I'd like to discuss today. And I thought you might like to know who you are. But instead of pointing at you, which would be gratuitous and intrusive, what I thought I'd do would be to tell you a little bit of research and to tell you a couple of stories that might enable you to catch a glimpse of yourself in a way you may not have before. I'm in the field of science known as personality psychology. It's part of a broader field of personality science that stretches everywhere from the study of neurons to the study of narratives. And it's designed to look at you from this perspective. In what way are you like all other people, like some other people, and like no other person? And I think that it's the latter, how are you singularly you, that is going to be the most important takeaway of my presentation today. One of the most influential theories of personality right now concerns human traits. And it's been discovered in research around the world that in every culture and every language group, 5 major dimensions of personality emerge. And we might see these as ways in which you, personally, differ from the person sitting next to you right now. They spell out the acronym OCEAN. So that O stands for open individuals, in contrast to closed. The open people here already are sort of leaning forward a little bit, wondering if they're going to pick up some information to help explain their ex-boyfriend. C stands for conscientiousness. Conscientious individuals, I've been noting, have been taking notes throughout this event and are likely to continue doing so in my presentation. Extroverts are very much engaged. E stands for extroverts, and you can spot them here, and I'll have a bit more to say about those of you who are extroverts, particularly those of you in the upper reaches at the back, just dying to get away to get stimulated somewhere. E stands for agreeableness. Agreeable people are hugging a lot at this conference. And I've seen you hug people, some of whom were not highly agreeable people. They were disagreeable people, and they were a little taken aback by your hug. N stands for neuroticism. And I think that there are a number of people who might be described effectively as rather neurotic here. I think that term is a little unfortunate because it casts a kind of pall over you that I think misses something really important about those of you who are neurotic. And that is that you're very sensitive, maybe hypersensitive, but you're sensitive to the things that many of us may not even see. You're like canaries in the mine. Now, I want to focus upon extroversion because it helps us understand what I call 3 aspects of our human natures. In fact, we might even call them 3 human natures. The first is what I call biogenic, and this is our neurophysiology and how it influences the shape of our lives. The second is sociogenic nature. Sociogenesis refers to how we learn cultural patterns, templates, ways of living, norms that help shape our behavior. And the third is what I call idiogenic. It arises from our own idiosyncratic personal projects. And to give you a hint of where I'm going, if I really want to understand you, I want to understand what are the core personal projects in your lives. But let's take an example of the biogenic, the neurophysiological base. of extroverted behavior. Those of you who are extroverts are very much motivated to seek out rewards in your environment. You seek them out. This is supported by dopamine and dopaminergic pathways in the brain. You love to seek out stimulation. You've sought it out here. You may be seeking it out right now. I often tell my students that there is a not very well-known anatomical fact that it is literally impossible for us adults to lick the outside of our own elbow. Don't dislocate it now. Now, those of us who are more introverted, and I use the inclusive term advisedly, those of us who are introverted because we're not always what we appear to be, may demur from trying to lick our elbow. The extrovert has not only tried to lick her elbow, she successfully licked the elbow of the person sitting next to her. Now, stimulation is fascinating because extroverts seek it out. They tend to act quickly, make a few mistakes, in contrast to the more introverted tendency to take time to do things properly and get them right. Now, my students at Cambridge urged me to tell you about sexual behavior. And I said, no, this is a very serious audience, and I have no intention, unless you would like me, to tell you about the frequency of sexual intercourse. Oh, okay. I thought you might. There was a study done, and I have to qualify this, in Germany in the late 70s with heterosexual students that looked at frequency with which you engage in the anatomical act that we're referring to here. Now, how frequently per minute? Oh, I'm sorry, that was a rat study. How many times per month? Oh, you're cute. Do introverted males engage in the act? And it's 3.0. How about extroverted males? More or less? 5.5, more. I would point out, though, that don't forget to recall about the quality-quantity trade-off. So just think about that for a second. Introverted women, 3.1. Extroverted women, frankly, speaking as an extroverted male, or as an introverted male, they are heroic. 7.5. They not only handle all the extroverts, they pick up a few introverts as well. Yeah. Now, we speak differently and we interact differently. Extroverts like to have interactions that are close. They like to have mutual gaze. They like to have body contact, usually unsolicited. Introverts do not prefer that as much. And when they get together, it sort of describes a kind of United Nations dance in which the extroverts, reflecting perhaps the sociogenic culture that they come from. Some cultures place an emphasis upon extroverted conduct. So they stand close, they have a lot of body contact, introverts tend to stand back. So when they interact, it's strange. The extrovert, to be polite, moves forward. The introvert, to be polite, moves backwards. And it gives rise to a kind of vector resolution problem. There are a limited number of ways it can be resolved. One is for the introvert to go bolt backwards, which doesn't look very genial at a cocktail party. The resolution is both mathematically and culturally brilliant. The introvert just goes, and watch yourselves when you're at the break, at lunchtime. The introvert just goes in a backward spiral motion. It is as though they keep going, and it keeps the interaction going until they're pinned in a corner being breathed upon by a lusty extrovert. You don't need to go to a formal event. You can see it in your offices. It's 9 in the morning. The designated extrovert in your hallway pokes his head in the door and says, "Good morning." And all the introverts cringe and say, "Oh, he's going to hug us again." And he does. And it's not that introverts are against hugging. It's just that they have hierarchically organized, designated huggers and huggies, into which hierarchy he doesn't happen to fall. And it's not that extroverts are hustling or hassling. Not necessarily. It's just that the bounds of conviviality that define his personal space extend to you on one muggy morning in Puebla. There's a crash of personalities. And now you're understanding part of why that happens. We speak differently. Those of us who are introverts speak differently from those of you who are extroverts. Extroverts prefer black and white, concrete, simple language. We introverts prefer contextually complex, contingent, weasel words, more or less, as it were, like that. An example. I had a consulting contract that I shared with a colleague who was as different from me as two people can be. First, his name is Tom, and mine is not. Secondly, he's 6'5", and I have a tendency not to be. Thirdly, he's a card-carrying extrovert. I am biogenically introverted. I can't have coffee after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because it's too stimulating for me, and expect to sleep. We had seconded to our project a fellow we'll call Michael, because that was his name. Michael almost brought our project to a screeching halt. And the person who brought him into the team asked Tom and me what we thought. Tom responded in classic extrovertese, and then they said to me, "Brian, what do you think of Michael?" And this is how we sound to extroverted ears. It's as though I said, "Well, Michael has a tendency at times of behaving in a way that some of us might see as perhaps more assertive than is normally called for." Tom rolled his eyes and he said, "Brian, that's what I said. He's an asshole." Now, as an introvert, I might gently allude to certain assholic qualities in this man's behavior. Boy, I don't know what the translators are going to do with that one. Assholic, right? Bless your hearts, incidentally, those of you who are doing the interpretation. Bless your hearts. But we do talk past each other, and these are some of the hints that a trait psychology can give you about what we are like. If I stopped here, I would have done you a disservice because we're much more. Remember I talked about our idiogenic selves? We're not just our traits. We're not just a bunch of traits. You are not just a bunch of traits. You're the personal projects that matter to you. The kid you're worrying about even now as you're listening to this. The mom you've been trying to get into a care home, and you've had to act out of character. You're a naturally agreeable person, but you've been disagreeable for all of this month in order to advance a core project that matters to you. I'm a professor. I'm introverted. As a professor, I need to profess, which means to convey with passion what I believe to be true, no holds barred. And if I have to stand on my head at 8 in the morning to get my students excited, terrific. I love my students. I love my field of study. And so I have to act out of character, as many of you do. You may just be realizing that you have acted as a pseudo-extrovert for 5 years because of love. We do it for professionalism, and we do it out of love. And that is partly what makes us noble. And in order, I think, to continue that, to sustain our core projects in our lives, we have to act out of character. One final concern: it might burn us out. Protractedly acting out of character may burn us out. And so we need what I call a restorative niche every now and then. Susan Cain, in her book, Quiet, which many of you know, had a strange chapter in it by a strange Canadian psychologist who was at that time teaching at Harvard, who used to hide in the men's room after lecturing because I was overstimulated. I'm going there now. Please don't follow me. Gracias.